Huh.
Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Oh, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Conn Report wherever you get your podcast. You watch it on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can become a member of the show. Go to the Empire Media YouTube page. You'll see the word join on there and click there. You're going to have 3 different levels of membership tiers. Pick one that suits you. As soon as this coaching stuff kind of gets settled, we're going to do a lot of things for you members with some live stream, private Q&As, some private Zooms for the gold members. But I want to get this coaching situation settled so I can have some good answers for you in those chats. So let's get to that. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. In a couple minutes, I'm going to be joined by my pal, Nicki Jhabvala from the Washington Post. And we're going to go over, what are the optics of this search? What does it say about this job or about the Commanders that they're the last team that has to hire a coach during this process? Are the optics bad? We'll talk about that. And I'll share my thoughts at that time. So don't want to stay on that. But the news of the day, Mike Macdonald going to Seattle, sounds like I know he's a guy that they liked. It also sounds like that Macdonald may have just liked Seattle better for whatever reason, and Seattle certainly seemed to really want him. And it could be as simple as the Seahawks, that's the guy they really wanted. And sometimes, with the Commanders, I did not hear, you heard Ben Johnson as a top candidate, a guy they really liked, and probably a leading candidate. But beyond that, you really didn't hear this guy was this or this guy was that. So I don't know if the Commanders had the same level of affection for him that Seattle did. I'm not saying they didn't. I just don't know that they did. So I don't know that he was a guy that spurned them as much as maybe they wanted him, but maybe Seattle just wanted him more and they wanted him more earlier in the process. That could be as well. So, like I said, I heard that they liked him. Clearly they liked him because they were still interested in him. The one thing I wonder about him that you'd hear about him is, he's very, very, very good X's and O's guy. Is he the kind of leader that is going to be very, very firm in front of the room? That was one of the questions I heard about him, not from somebody with the Commanders, but somebody else outside of there. And maybe he is, and maybe he's ready. He could be a very, very good head coach. We don't know. And I'm not trying to diminish their loss because that's not my job here. But it is something that I did hear about him. However, like I said, I know that they liked him here. So they clearly would have thought that he would be okay in that role. But now what it means is they're down to 3. So that's Dan Quinn, Anthony Weaver, and Aaron Glenn. All 3 have that leadership quality that the Commanders said they wanted. So, and again, I'm going to get into all this is said. There's a lot of stuff out there that, I just kind of ignore a lot of the noise. And I think you should too. And I think I would just kind of get off social media for a while because I don't know that it's a very healthy place ever, but certainly not now. Because I just think there's a lot of people with their own little theories and I'll go through them and I'll see them. I'm like, nope, you're way off. But people are allowed to have them. So, because that's what makes kind of the sports fun and the NFL fun. But as far as that goes, would they open the search back up? And Nicki and I talk about this. My little quick answer is, if some of these names that you're going to float now, they were available before, why would they, if they like this group of candidates better, why would they then go and talk to 4 more people? It would have meant that their initial choices were off. So if they wanted to wait for a Steve Wilkes or someone like that, why, they could have put their names on the list before. Adam Peters knows Steve Wilkes. He worked in the same organization. If they really wanted him, they could have talked to him and set up those interviews. And it shouldn't matter if Ben Johnson dropped out. They weren't sitting there. Not everybody was sitting there saying, he is our guy, period. That was Adam Peters. That was their guy. Ben Johnson was a guy they really liked, but it was not a done deal. I don't know how many times that can be said. So please understand that. Doesn't mean you're going to be thrilled with the coach, and the job is to be thrilled at the end of December, not in January, February. Or that's what you want, is to be thrilled then. Whoever it is, whether it's Weaver or Quinn or Aaron Glenn. But it wasn't like they were caught off. I mean, I think they were surprised by it because other people who were close to Johnson were surprised by his decision. But it's not like they said, this is the only guy we're going to go after. And now what? Well, you interview these people for a reason. That's the now what. Okay, this guy's not there. What do you think about this guy? What do you think about this guy? And the other thing I know is it was not going to be a decision. Everything I'd heard before Johnson announced his decision was that there's probably going to be the end of the week. So the timetable didn't change. It's not like they're sitting there panicking like, oh my gosh, they may not have hired anybody anyways until Thursday or Friday. Just understand that. So, and it doesn't mean that maybe they have to think of over some more things because of McDonald leaving. Slowick was not going to be the coach. More people I talked to felt like he needed another year or two as a coordinator before he was a really strong head coaching candidate. So I don't put him in that same category. Johnson was certainly a guy that they would have been interested in, and same with McDonald. And I did talk to someone else tonight about, I asked him like, hey, I talked about this with Nicki about what you think of the job still. He's like, hey, this is a really good job. And this is somebody who very familiar with what's going on here. So outside of the Commanders, but he certainly has a lot. He certainly knows a lot about this situation. And he even said that he still thinks it's a really good job because of the draft picks, because of the new owner, because of the cap space. You add it all up. And, again, you look at Seattle. I mean, Seattle has a lot going for it too. So I don't blame somebody if they thought the Seahawks was a little bit better. You have a great practice facility. They're a little bit further ahead with the roster for sure. It's going to take more work here. But I think the other factors and I think the patience of the owner are going to be something that will still attract a good situation, will still make for a good situation in Washington. But it's certainly, the optics are tough because you don't want to be the last guy standing. You want to make sure you get a guy, and you don't want to make it look like, oh, he's our third choice. But to now, nobody has been offered the position. So it's hard to say who was a second choice or third choice or first. I think Johnson probably would have been the first choice. Still wanted to meet with them, but I think there's a reason why they had these other guys on the list. And from the start, I think I told you there was not someone who just said, this is absolutely the number one guy. I think there were people who would say, like, you like this guy. Sure. It could be Johnson, right? Johnson. But it wasn't like it was so far ahead the way they felt Peters was in the GM candidacy situation. So, and I don't, people talk about Mike Vrabel. I bring this up with Nicki, so I'm going to repeat myself here. So I apologize. But one thing to know with Vrabel, they did not want a coach who commanded a lot of power. They want the GM to be the power guy in the football side. And one of the issues that my understanding in Tennessee was there was maybe some issues there. So if you know that, here, Rand Carthon came from San Francisco where Adam Peters was. I think they may have talked. So, if you know that this is what Vrabel is a very good coach who had a tough last couple of years. So in a division that's, last year was kind of weak, but, this year was better because of Houston. Jacksonville was okay, but Indianapolis was all right. So it was actually a better division this year. So he's a very good coach. I really like the guy as a coach, but if it's not a good power structure setup, it's not going to work. I've seen that play out here time and time again. So I'm not sitting here expecting, oh, will they go to Mike Vrabel? If they wanted Mike Vrabel, they'd have gone to him in the beginning. And if you're Vrabel, you're like, wait a minute, you were waiting to see what Ben Johnson and Mike McDonald did before you came to me? Get out of here. If you wanted me, you could have come to me in the beginning. That's how I would say too. So anyway, but again, I'm not anticipating that either because, again, these are the coaches they chose at the beginning of this process to go through. And I think they're still going to come out away with one of these guys as a head coach. Could be a curveball, and that's where you say, hey, I'm not involved in the process. Didn't see Joe Gibbs coming back. Didn't see, the Ron Rivera was something that Dan Snyder kept quiet. So there's that curveball, but that's not what I've been hearing so to date. So we'll see. Also, I'm going to do a live stream show when they hire a new coach. Know that. So as soon as the announcement is made, I'll tweet something out. We'll put a notification on the Empire Media YouTube page. So that way, when it might happen. And for memory, hopefully we can set, you can check back. So I would say after an announcement is made, probably within an hour or so, check the Empire Media YouTube page to see when I'm going to go live and talk about the new coach hire, whether it's a therapy Thursday session or not, depending on who's hired. But I would say this, so you can kind of take a deep breath, that they are in a better spot because they have a better owner. They have a better power structure set up. They have a good evaluator in charge. You're going to have to trust that this is going to go. But the key is here that whoever is hired, whether it's Glenn, Quinn, or Weaver, you have to hire a really good offensive coordinator, but you have to hire a very, very strong staff. If you don't do that, I don't care who it is. We don't know what kind of staff McDonald will hire in Seattle or what Johnson would have hired. But these guys, whoever comes in, has to hire a good staff. If you don't, it's not going to work. So, and I think having a better setup the way they do, I think you're going to have a coach who maybe will have a GM who can help in that process. So you don't end up with, 20 people coming from the same organization again. So anyway, that's it for me. Now, here's my conversation with Nicki Jhabvala of the Washington Post.
Did you know at Kroger, shopping online with pickup and delivery is the same as shopping in store? Same low prices, same personalized deals, same rewards, with no hidden fees or markups on your same family favorites, like Honeycrisp apples and pasta sauce. The only difference is you don't have to put on shoes. Start your cart today at Kroger.com. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Do you want to stay up to date with the messiest drama on the internet? Or what about those crazy viral challenges? Then be sure to tune in to TMZ Verified, the podcast. I'm Wild.
I'm Steph.
And each week we're either breaking down the spicy viral stories or we're hanging out with the most popular influencers around. Tana Mojo is in the building.
I don't even know if they're hating. They're probably just telling the truth, but we love the haters too.
Sophia Franklin.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk, but let's be real with each other,
Bryce Hall is here, y'all. Make some noise, people.
I'm single, by the way.
Right.
So if you like viral drama, influencer culture, and just overall hot messiness, check out new episodes of TMZ Verified every Thursday right here on Spotify.
All right, Nicki, I don't even know where to begin because, as we both know, it's been chaotic. First of all, how many stories have you written that probably won't see the light of day?
This week alone, 5. So, yeah, it's been a lot. But
I think I'm up to, it would have been 6.
Yeah.
But while I was preparing a Mike McDonald story, he went to Seattle. So it kind of got me off the hook there. But
5.5. All right.
But nobody cares. Just for people know, you got to write all these stories, be prepared. So that's why, you're writing all these things just in case. And there's a lot of just in cases here. So let's start with the optics of all this. And, I think a lot of people are worried how this looks or anything like that. How do you feel this situation looks for them at this point?
If they're concerned about the fan perception, it's not great. I think everybody got so worked up over Ben Johnson, and he was a favorite, there's no doubt. But, he decided to pull out, and though everybody kind of wedded themselves to that vision, to that prospect, for them to turn to anybody else, really, it probably would have felt like, all right, we're on to plan B. Even if that meant Mike McDonald, but McDonald, he's young, had a great defense. He fits the mold of the next up and coming guy. Maybe he's the next Sean McVay, the next superstar. So that, that would have been probably perceived as a great hire, but for whatever reason, it wasn't the fit here, and he went on. So I think at this point, right or wrong, just the outside view will be perceived as, okay, well, now this is on option number 3, and what are we doing? Did they bungle this? And, we had this conversation. I think depending on the time frame here on out, it could be perceived a number of different ways. My view is, the longer it drags on, is it their admission of, we didn't get the guy we wanted. We're trying to figure out what to do. And again, this is purely perception, not, reality of their view of things. If they go to, say, Dan Quinn, Dan Quinn's been available for 2 weeks. If that was really the guy they wanted, they could have hired him on the spot and chose not to. So you have to factor that in. And, the longer you wait, the more you kind of wonder, do they open the search back up? Does that mean they don't like or don't really love any of the remaining candidates? So, all these things will be speculated and discussed by fans. I get the sense that Josh Harris is the type to kind of sift through the noise and really go for the guy he thinks is best for the team. So we'll see who they end up with.
Yeah. And I'm sure you heard the same stuff. It wasn't like I was not anticipating the hire on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Right.
So the timing of it, I don't know, has changed anything because it looks like, oh, now what do they do? But I don't know that it really changed the timing of anything. And I guess if we hear an announcement on Thursday or Friday, well, that seems to be when a timetable probably was at the beginning of the week, right? And so that's where I don't know. And that's hard to say with someone, we all know like Johnson was a guy that they were clearly very interested in. And that one surprised them. I don't know that it's like oh no, what do we do now type of scenario as much as it was, hey, here's a guy we really like who just told us he wants to stay in Detroit.
Right. And it's, it was not a lock. They went into this open-minded, but he was a top candidate. So he can be a top candidate and not be a lock. But yeah, I don't think by any means they were scrambling after that. They went into this, with a good bit of due diligence and knowing what the realities were for everybody involved. So yeah, I figured they would wrap up interviews Tuesday evening, and then the timetable there on out could be dictated by competitors too. Right. If you feel, there's, as Josh Harris said in his presser, the good candidates have alternatives, and you got to account for that. So if you feel that somebody else is, really taking an interest to the guy you like, you got to move quickly. So yeah, this is where they're at. I still, even though the view from the outset was Ben Johnson is the guy, I still think these are very strong candidates. And the reality is we have no idea what Ben Johnson will be like as a coach. We have no idea what Mike McDonald will be like as a coach. There is a track record of what Dan Quinn has been because he's been in those shoes before. But there's so many unknowns to feel any sort of heartbreak as a fan is frankly kind of ridiculous in my mind.
Well, I'm guessing, a lot of people probably didn't know who some of these candidates were a couple months ago. So, and then they become people you can't live without and I don't blame them because you hear a lot about them. And I'm not, and I know a lot of people would have known Ben Johnson for a while because he was a name last year and McDonald's a good coordinator, but it becomes can't live without him. And we don't know what they do. Just like we don't know that Dan Quinn's second time is going to be better than the first. We know he'll learn and have some lessons that he learned. How does he implement them? And so if that's the guy or if it's Aaron Glenn or Anthony Weaver, whomever, we don't know what they're going to do. And same with McDonald. I think it's just like the quarterbacks in this draft, Nikki, like all these guys have really good strengths that it leads you to say like they could be a good coach. And then I think they have some things where you say like, this is what gives me pause. And this is for all of them. And so that's the part where that's why it's hard to know whomever they hire, where were they at on their pecking order? Is it a bunch of lined across the top, or was Johnson a little bit ahead, or this? You know what I mean? And then that's the hard part to know in all this.
Right. And I to your point, I think it's very similar to the draft. We get so caught up in names and prospects, and most of the time, there's been very little film watching to know exactly what he is and what he can bring. But that name, the more it's circulated, becomes entrenched as sort of a savior for any sort of franchise. And then when he doesn't pan out, he's deemed a bust. So some of these expectations are not met with reality. But this is something they knew was a possibility. Again, you got to remember the folks that are a part of this search committee with Washington. You got two former executives in different leagues, and Bob Myers and Rick Spielman, and then you have Josh Harris, who's no stranger to pro sports and dealing with this, with time with the Devils and the Sixers and his Premier League team. Mitch Rales, Magic Johnson, they've done so many high-level hires. They know that there will be twists and turns in the process, no matter what. This is not new to them. So you go into it, of course, with contingencies and, who's your 1B if your 1A is gone and things like that. So.
Right. And I think, they wanted to meet with Johnson again, clearly,
Sure.
because and the other thing that we know about Harris, and I was going to ask you too, what have you learned anything throughout this process just about how their process is? Because one of the things we know about Harris, he wants all the information possible before making a decision. And I know there've been other times, Daryl Morey, Doc Rivers, they went pretty hard and, pretty quick with them. But a lot of times he wants all that information. So have you learned anything as this process has gone on, just from an observation standpoint?
Maybe not learned, but, confirmed, what we had seen in his processes elsewhere. I think when he said thorough but rapid, he was very, that was in regards to the GM search,
Right.
But I think that was a very honest description of his intent there. But I think, it's sort of the same with the coaching search. They've been hindered in part by the NFL's rules where you can't interview guys at certain times. But I think they have been there. I think the fact that they are willing to bring on outside experts to kind of help them in this process speaks a lot to what kind of owner Josh Harris is he wants, like you said, to have all the information. He's willing to turn to folks who know more to make sure he gets that information. So I think it's different. And I gotta think when you see Bob Myers or Rick Spielman on the other side of the interview room, it makes you, as a candidate, and I've never been in that situation, but I got to think that this sort of gives a view that, okay, this is an owner that is really trying to understand the profession more, really wants to, do a thorough job here and get as much as he can, because that's not a typical format usually in NFL search processes.
And to be transparent, Nicki, they have not talked to me either for an interview with this.
Wow. So maybe they're not as, thorough as they say.
I mean, don't they know that I watch film on Monday mornings at 6 a.m.? Come on. Like, what are they waiting for?
Grinding.
We're sports reporters. We know everything.
We know everything. Oh.
So, but I'm curious, like, how you think, because I think this also leads, because the other question you get, and I think it's a fair one, is how, does this say something about how this job is perceived? And just, I did talk to someone tonight and I asked them that, and it's somebody who is, clear, very involved in the league and all that, and understands the situation pretty well. He's like, no, this is still a really good job. So, but I'm curious, like, what do you think?
I agree with that. I mean, I think Seattle is just as appealing to. I mean, look at their facility for one.
Yeah.
And that's a very good job, and that could be a preference for McDonald over there. I don't think because he chose that's a knock on Washington necessarily, and because Ben Johnson decided to stay in Detroit, I don't think that's a knock on what Washington has to offer. That was clearly a personal preference. Like he would have, if he's truly going back for the same title and same pay, he would have made more and had a opportunity to launch at the next level here. That was a personal decision.
Right.
But, I don't, in previous years, we all know that where Washington stood. But, I think this year has been more circumstantial with how things have played out. And I do think still Washington offers the best opportunity for a head coach, but it does need a lot of work. It's just not like it doesn't seem as Hurst, I guess, as it did before.
Right. Yeah. Because I think if they had, here's the other, they didn't offer these jobs and were turned down. But it does seem like McDonald and Seattle were they liked each other a lot. Right.
Right.
And it is funny because like going back to Dan Quinn, we're talking about the draft. I think for a lot of fans, Quinn feels like the offensive tackle of the draft, where like, well, he's a safe pick because if he doesn't work here, you can push him inside. but he is a guy that has a really good reputation. I know people who listen to this probably get tired of me talking about this, but it's true. Like everybody I've talked to about him really, really sings his praises. And I can't help what I hear. And, but like, there's a lot of people who like Aaron Glenn. There are a lot of people like Mike McDonald, a lot of people who like Ben Johnson.
Yeah. No. And I've heard this. I've talked to a number of former players, guys that have worked alongside him as assistants, and I haven't heard a bad thing about him. And I honestly think that's important for this team at this time, coming off a 4-13 season of 7 years without a winning record. It's not like that locker room was the closest group of all time.
This year was not.
Just because you want somebody who can, and I hate to ever say the culture word again, because I think it was overused. But I think having somebody who can sort of kind of bring players together, I think that's important for where this franchise is at. You need a good football mind, no doubt, but you need somebody who also, I think, is experiencing kind of fixing places, and he does have that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge selling point for him too. Is yes, he's not the up and coming hot shot. He's not the sexy hire, but he might be sort of what the team needs now. And again, I know people said that about Ron Rivera when he came in. I don't know that anybody saw all the stuff that would happen over the 3 years of his tenure, but I do think Quinn, if that's who they want, is a very strong football mind too. I mean, look at what he did with the Cowboys defense. Don't forget about Legion of Boom. I mean, and he can, he's built good staffs before, which I think is incredibly important, because if it's him or any other defensive coach, the OC becomes so huge.
Right.
And he has a track record of building good staff.
Listen, people talk about the staff in Washington in 2013. That staff in 2016 with Atlanta, it was McDaniel, LaFleur, Shanahan. I mean, Raheem was there too. So that was yes. And that's the key. And the funny thing is, it was his defense that really struggled in Atlanta more than the offense. Right. And again, I know people keep bringing up the 2.0. I don't view it that way, because they're different people. They have different strengths. They're defensive coaches. That's, and they were in a Super Bowl before. I think another difference, again, we don't know if they're going to go that way or not. But I think the fact that he wasn't coming from Atlanta, and so you're not going to just try and recreate Atlanta. Yeah. And I think Ron got in trouble trying to recreate Carolina. But whoever comes here, that aside, is you have an owner who's put you in a better spot, but you also have a football executive who clearly has the power. The coach is there. So I think that's another difference too. That is where I think this place has improved.
Right. So, no, I agree totally. I think that siloed structure is important. And that was a selling point for Ron, to have all control. I know he says now that he, really enjoyed just being a coach, but that was a selling point at the time. But live and learn, it didn't work out. And I think it's important, sometimes it's really good for the head coach to have that sort of buffer, so you're not the one answering for every little thing that happens with a franchise. And I also think Adam Peters is just a really good personnel evaluator, and they need more of that.
Yes. And I think that's a big key. And because that coach centric thing, it's a tough model. And people want to know about Vrabel and all that. And my own belief is, they did not want the coach to have that kind of power. Vrabel in Tennessee, I think that was part of what was going on there.
Ownership, clearly.
And keep in mind that Rand Carthon came from San Francisco and worked with Adam Peters. So people, they know what a Vrabel would want just based on that experience too. So that's why but at this point, Nicki, I'm kind of throwing my hands up in the air, and maybe I'll just start writing stories about if they promote, Tavita Pritchard to head coach or something like that. And just in case, because I covered the Jim Zorn search, which was, you talk about a massive curveball, but this is not Jim Zorn. And these coaches are better than the ones on that list that led to Jim Zorn. So, and I know you weren't here. You're fortunate you didn't go through that. I still have scars from going through that. But are there any do you come away with like lingering questions about anything at this point, in addition, besides just who is it going to be?
Yeah. I mean, if it goes deep into tomorrow, I'm going to wonder, like, are they opening the search up again? Are they, because if you can't decide off the 3 candidates by then, does that mean you have reservations? Are you, reopening the field? And then what? Then what's your timetable? And then what does that mean for the rest of the staff? And, if they have found their guy, certainly the questions then for me turn to, all right, who's your OC? That's the most important question after he's hired is, who's going to be the guy leading your next quarterback, calling the shots on the offense. And, there's some names out there I think might be possibilities, but, it depends certainly on who the coach is.
Right. And I think that's a big thing. And that's why, man, if they open the search up, to me, that's the bad look.
Yeah, that's not a great sign. That means they
and I'm not
really
saying
the 7 they started with, basically.
Right. And I don't know that, I haven't heard that they are. I don't, maybe.
So
you haven't heard that, but if they did that, I think because people keep asking, we talk about optics, that would be the tough one, because it would have told me that you weren't as prepared for your search as you thought you were. And if you had, like, at the beginning of this, you would hear, like, I know you heard the same stuff, like Peters was the far away the best candidate. With the coaches, it was while they're definitely, Johnson was definitely, a preferred candidate. It wasn't like there was a runaway candidate, and the pool, that I think the feeling was that was deeper than what the GM pool was.
Yeah.
Right. So, which is why if you turn away from a Glenn or Dan Quinn or Weaver, then you should have had those other people on your list to begin with. Right.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a tough balance that they're probably navigating now is, when's the right timing? Do we, aside from, making sure you feel really great about the candidate you're going to offer, is sort of the timing. But again, like you said, I don't get the sense that Josh Harris is as concerned with the outside perception as he is with getting the right guy. I would have, other regimes, I think you could say that maybe perception mattered more.
I think it did.
But with this one, just looking at his track record, but we'll see.
Right. And I think that's the other thing, because he went through the process in Philly. He took the hard knocks from going through that process. I think it kind of like, I think it steeled him as an owner. It would me, like if you go through that and you take whatever knocks come your way and you can survive that, then I think it shows you that, hey, your process is your process. And, I think process there is like culture here. I think the buzzword is a little bit, and again, this year it's going to be aligned vision. So, I think that's going to be the buzz phrase this year.
How many times was it said in
7? And you said that. You said that, and I went back and double checked. Like it was 7. So yes,
that was the buzzword of the day, and that's been the buzzword for much of Josh Harris's tenure. Aligned vision.
Right. So I'm hoping for our sake that it ends soon.
This is about us, John.
It has to be at some point.
Obviously. How is it not about us? We deserve this, John.
I thought it was. And like I haven't shaved in a couple of days, although nobody can tell because
I think I can smell you through Zoom. Have you showered recently?
I did. I actually did before we jumped on here, because like, it's whatever o'clock and I haven't showered yet, So I was happy that I went to the barbershop yesterday in Berryville. I got my ears lowered, but I was thinking here earlier, I'm like, what day did I go? And anyway, but people don't care. People don't care about us, despite the fact that they probably should, because I'm agreed. So, but anyways, we'll see what happens. And I think I don't have any sense. I would think it would be wrapped up by the end of the week, because at this point, it's 3 people.
I hope it's wrapped up by the end of the week.
Because then I think that's where, again, the optics start to turn if you don't, because then like, why aren't you sold on one of these guys? And what is it that's holding you back? And, the funny thing is too, like, it could be as simple as maybe you're talking to somebody and you don't necessarily like their staff that they're suggesting. Are they You know what I mean? Are you trying to work with them? I don't know. And because I know, like I heard there was one candidate in this coaching search with another team where they didn't like the defensive coordinator this person had suggested. And so he's not on their list. So you don't know all these reasons why, and it could be the staff. And like you said, especially if it's like Glenn or Weaver, who they haven't been a head coach. I mean, for all of them, it's a huge, huge hire. For all of them, it's a huge
Or
hire.
if, their current place is trying to keep them and
so
adding in more money or a tag or whatever. So it could be any number of things.
There you go, Nikki. Well, like I said, I hope it's over soon so we can get some rest, and then I can delete about 100 stories that will never see the light of day. So thanks a lot for coming on, Nikki.
Of course.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Nikki for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. Again, I'm going to do a live stream show on the YouTube channel. So if you listen to this, go to the Empire Media YouTube page. Within an hour or so after the coach is hired, then you'll just check that page to see when the show will go live. But I'll tweet it out as well and give you as much notice as I can. But I'll go ahead and get on there for about 20 minutes, see what happens. And if not, I'll be back Friday morning. So I'll talk to you next time.